What would you do if your landlords, who are also licensed real estate agents, tried to blackmail you by threatening to sabotage the purchase of your first home? In today's story, the protagonist's response is a masterclass in how to handle it. For 3 years, I rented the bottom floor of a 3-floor house. It was a pretty straightforward arrangement. I always paid my rent on time. And other than a few minor repairs, my landlords and I left each other alone. During my time there, my life evolved. I got a fiancé, Chloe, and we got a dog. I made sure to document everything through emails. And the landlords were perfectly reasonable about the small rent increases. No problems at all. This peaceful coexistence changed about 5 months before my third lease was up. Chloe and I were getting married in 6 months. And we decided it was time to buy a starter house. It just made more financial sense. We thought we were doing the right thing by giving our landlords a heads up. We sat down with them and explained that we were thinking about not renewing the lease and why. Now, here's a critical detail: the landlords, a husband and wife team named Mark and Brenda, were not just property owners. They were also real estate agents. And their website proudly displayed the seal of the National Association of Realtors on every single page. When we told them our plans, they didn't seem upset. Instead, they got very interested in becoming our real estate agents. We told them we'd consider it. Ultimately, we decided to go with a family friend to help us find a house. We found a place we loved in a price range we could afford, put in an offer, and after a bit of back and forth, it was accepted. The closing process began. We followed our lease to the letter and gave Mark and Brenda a formal 60-day notice. And that's when they completely lost it. I'll skip over weeks of drama and threats and get straight to the ultimate confrontation. Before we had even moved out, they sued me for damages to the apartment. Crucially, they only sued me. They had never officially added Chloe to the lease, a detail that would become very important later. Their motive was pure, calculated malice. As Mark and Brenda gloated to me several times, being real estate agents, they knew we couldn't close on our mortgage with an active lawsuit against me, no matter how frivolous it was. They gleefully pointed out that they could drag out the appeals process for years. They had us cornered. And they knew it. Mark and Brenda gloated, certain their clever manipulation of the legal system had put us in an impossible position. They were completely unaware that in their arrogance, they had just handed us the very tool we would use to dismantle their entire business. We sought legal advice. A lawyer, referred to us by the local bar association, gave us a consultation at a much reduced rate. He confirmed our fears: what our landlords were doing was profoundly unethical. But it wasn't strictly illegal. They could easily follow through on their threat and derail our home purchase. In the end, we were forced to pay them $1,800 in blackmail. I had to sign a confidentiality agreement, and the lawsuit was dropped. We were finally able to close on our house. This revealed the landlord's greatest fatal flaw: their blinding greed. They were so focused on the $1,800 in front of them that they failed to consider who they were dealing with: an engineer who understood systems, rules, and consequences far better than they did. And now, for the revenge. I'm an engineer, and my work often involves dealing with municipal agencies, including code enforcement departments. I'm intimately familiar with building codes and the bureaucratic systems that enforce them. In the county where I lived, there's a law requiring all rental properties to be registered with the local township for tax purposes, to be rented out. They must pass a code inspection and be issued a certificate of occupancy. However, most of the homes in our area are 50 to 100 years old. As a result, landlords routinely ignore these regulations, banking on the fact that code enforcement officers are usually too swamped with emergencies to proactively check for compliance. This is where the plan began to form. After a few months of careful planning, I put it into motion. All county property records were conveniently available online for free. I spent some time digging and compiled a list of 15 rental properties that Mark and Brenda owned in that county. I made sure to exclude the one we had lived in to avoid any potential breach of the NDA I had signed. It was a small detail that they never added Chloe to the lease. An oversight on their part from years ago. They couldn't have known that this seemingly insignificant bit of laziness would ultimately be their undoing. One weekend, I took a drive and snapped a few pictures of each of their 15 properties. Then, a letter was drafted. A concerned citizen, my fiancé, Chloe, had supposedly looked at one of their rental properties. She was concerned that some cracks in the basement foundation might be structural. A common sight in houses of that age, but a legitimate safety concern. The letter simply stated that she wanted to make sure the property had been inspected for safety before a certificate of occupancy had been issued. Given our landlord's character, we were almost certain one had never been applied for. A copy of this letter, tailored for each specific property, was sent to the code enforcement officer, the tax official, and the township council for every single township where Mark and Brenda owned a rental. Over the next few months, Chloe received several phone calls from officials in most of those townships. She stuck to the script every time. She was a potential renter who just wanted to ensure the houses were inspected and safe. The officials' responses were telling. Not one of the properties they called back about had ever been registered or inspected. And now that these issues were officially documented in their books, they had no choice but to enforce the regulations. I don't have the exact figures, but I can only imagine the cost of upgrading one 100-year-old house to meet current rental codes, let alone 15 of them. It had to be in the tens of thousands of dollars. And that's not even counting the years of back taxes, fees, and penalties for operating unregistered rental properties. We never heard a word from our former landlords. I like to think that once that mountain of government-sanctioned trouble landed on their doorstep, they finally hired a lawyer smart enough to tell them to stop poking the angry bear. This whole situation brings to mind a lesson shared by another user online: if you're doing illegal things, don't threaten the people who know you're doing illegal things. My curiosity got the better of me recently. I ran another search for them in the county property records. They are now down to just 8 rental properties. It appears the majority were sold within a year of us moving out, several of them at a significant loss. So, assuming we were the cause, that $1,800 in blackmail ended up costing them over $30,000 just from the property sales alone. That doesn't account for the cost of getting their remaining properties up to code or their lost rental income. But that wasn't all. There was an icing on the cake. During their blackmail campaign, Mark and Brenda had been incredibly foolish. They had conducted themselves in a completely unprofessional manner in a lengthy email chain from their business email addresses. In these emails, they admitted to some extremely unethical practices, including the fact that their lawsuit against me was completely frivolous and that they knew I'd have to pay them if I ever wanted to get a mortgage. And they were careless enough to reply all, CCing Chloe on the entire exchange. As many have pointed out, I signed the confidentiality agreement, but Chloe never did. She was not bound by it in any way. So, Chloe forwarded that entire Damning email exchanged to the ethics officer and the president of the local chapter of the National Association of Realtors. She also sent it to the national ethics officer, using the convenient links they provided on their own website. She received follow-up calls from both the local and national organizations, asking if she wanted to file an official complaint. Chloe explained that due to the confidentiality agreement I had signed, we felt we couldn't file an official complaint without risking shaky legal ground. However, we wanted them to know what kind of people were using their organization's name and reputation. They assured her it was something they would definitely look into. But we never heard anything else back directly. When I checked their business website tonight, a few years after the fact, all references to the National Association of Realtors had been scrubbed. According to the membership list on the local chapter's website, they are no longer members. I like to think we had a hand in that. In the end, our landlord's greed and unethical behavior cost them dearly. Their attempt to squeeze $1,800 out of us backfired spectacularly, costing them half their properties and their professional credentials. It just goes to show that trying to bully people with threats is a dangerous game, especially when your target knows how to use the system against you. So, what do you think? Was this revenge justified? And have you ever had to use your own specialized knowledge to turn the tables on someone who wronged you? Let us know in the comments below.